Gate 14 podcast, and folks, we got the white whale, the biggest guest in the history of this podcast. He signed with the Toronto Blue Jays 2 years ago and has finished top 10 in AL Cy Young voting both years. He led the league in strikeouts last year. Is that good? You tell me. And most importantly, he's our ace. He's a part of the royal family, the Gausmans. It is Kevin Gausman. Welcome to the Gate 14 podcast, brother. What a pleasure this is to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
It's
Listen,
it,
man,
Johnny said it's a long time coming. What's the off season been like for you? Relaxed and ready for the season?
Yeah, I got two kids under five, so there's not too much relaxing going on, to be honest. It's carpool and gymnastics classes, dance classes, a birthday every weekend. So rest in the body, but the mind is going nonstop. So it's I'm looking forward to getting back in the clubhouse with around some guys. I'm the only man in my house, so at certain times it's just I'm over all the princess stuff, and I'm ready to get back into the clubhouse.
I love that. Let's go into Toronto stuff here because obviously, you chose to sign here over another team, and we're not going to degrade the other team, obviously. But what went into that decision of you deciding to sign for less money, playing for the Toronto Blue Jays?
For me, Toronto has kind of always held a special place in my heart, just because that's where I made my major league debut. So, playing there in Baltimore, it was always a good matchup too. Us against the Blue Jays, we were one of the better teams in the American League while I was in Baltimore, and it's definitely true for Toronto around that time. So, I always loved going there and traveling there, and being able to explore the city a little bit. As you guys know, it's such a different city than Philly or New York, and Chicago. It's just it's Canada, so it's a completely different country, and you kind of feel that right away. And so early on in my career, Toronto was always fun too, because that's when we dressed up, was usually when we had to leave Toronto and go through customs. So that was always something that we look forward to September call ups, where we got to dress up all the young guys and make them go through customs with Joe Schmo. And so it always kind of held a special place in my heart. And 21, going in, as a guy looking at other teams, it was the Blue Jays were the team that it was like, these guys have a lot of talent and a lot of young talent that are going to be there, while I'm still there. Not guys that are 1 year away from going into free agency. A lot of young guys. So I automatically kind of thought that that would be a great place to be. And since we've been there, it's been even better. And they're amazing with the families, and everybody in the organization is first class. And our spring training complex is unbelievable. And now they did the outfield, and they're doing the inner bowl right now. So they're renovating all these special things, and we're going to have the best clubhouse in the big leagues. I think our strength department is one of the best in all baseball. And so our training room is probably going to be that way too. So all these things, they're kind of checking every single box. And so now it's just about going out there and really kind of doing what I set out the goal to do when I signed here, and that's to win the division, but not just win the division, but hopefully win a championship.
You one of your last tweets, you said you're not a big Twitter guy to us, was kind of the media was going through at Toronto, right? It was they don't really know. What do you think the biggest misconception is from outside media and just kind of your little platform to talk more about that tweet that you had?
Yeah, it's just so annoying because it comes from somebody who, we see once a year, who comes in to do a YouTube game, or, you know, do one of these, the Peacock game or something like. So it's so annoying when someone comes in for 3 days out of the summer, um, probably stays half a block from the stadium, and doesn't really check out more of the city, So that's what easy. But honestly, as a visiting player, you don't really get as much time to check out Toronto. So, I can see how if someone just goes there for 2 days, I could see how they could have a messed up view of what the city is like, and what the people are like. But, the more that I've been there, the more I've realized how unique it is to have one team that you really feel that, it kind of takes being there for a whole year. Now that I'm going into my third year, I understand that a lot more, but, it takes going to Seattle and playing, pretty much a home game in Seattle. Like, that's one of the coolest things, when they're thinking about selling Blue Jays stuff in the Seattle Mariners pro shop. Like, that's crazy, so it just doesn't happen. And so it just kind of goes to show you, and like meeting fans from the West Coast of Canada, people who've been going to Seattle to watch the Blue Jays play for the last 10 years with their family. And, I made the mistake last year walking around with Manoah, and like, you can't hide with that guy, he's huge. And like, so like everybody's like, hey, that's Manoah. You walk by and you turn around and there's 20 people that are like, yeah, that's him for sure. Like, I can kind of sneak by. Like, I kind of look like the normal, just like generic tall white guy, right? Like, I'm skinny, so I can kind of get away with it. The long hair definitely would kind of make people double check, but Manoah can't go anywhere. Like, he sticks out. Like, so it's funny, but I just hate how I feel like there's a messed up opinion of really Canada in general, but it's usually from people that haven't really been too much or spent much time in Canada.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I got a question. So I did I studied the Kevin Gausman from the college days, and the first video that comes up is you crow hopping pull down directly into your cat, like just launching a baseball into your catcher. And I gotta ask you this, this is a dumb question maybe, but how much did your catcher hate you? I mean, you are doing a legit pull down 108 right at the catcher before you throw off the mound. Was there a little bit of tension between you and that college catcher?
Yeah, well, originally I used to tell him to like get down too. So I used to make him get down, and like, you go from flat land to up on the slope to letting it eat as hard as you can. There was definitely times I threw the ball like 50 feet, as hard as I could. So, luckily my catcher in college was my roommate, Ty Ross. So, I could kind of get away with it a little bit more because we were boys. But yeah, none of them really liked it too much. And even when I was in San Francisco, like, I always throw the first one from behind the bullpen or from behind the mound to start the inning. And like, even Buster Posey thought that was like eye wash, like, as if it's like, all right, I love to do. And, it started back in Colorado growing up. I always felt like I would come in from, right field to come in to pitch. And I just wanted to like get one extra like crow hop in to kind of like let it eat, I guess. And my dad used to always tell me to like throw it halfway up the backstop, like really just intimidate the crap out of everybody. Like, throw a crow hop as hard as you can, but backstop, and like tell your catcher to even tell him like, this guy has no clue where the ball's going, and baseball in Denver, Colorado isn't very good. So, if you're throwing 90 or above, like, everybody treats it like you're throwing 100.
What kind of pitcher did you see yourself at in college? Because I had a guy text me. He said, look at his college scouting report, and it said plus breaking ball. And now that's kind of been totally eliminated. So you go to Baltimore. Where did things change? How did you see yourself as a pitcher, and kind of what you think of even your own progression as a pitcher, kind of taking that breaking ball away?
Yeah, it's funny. Me and Bassett would always talk about it because, we kind of came up around the same time, and it was like, if you throw sinkers, throw them down in the zone, and throw your slider or breaking ball down in the zone too. And then, we kind of realized that everybody can hit pitches down in the zone a lot easier. And it's funny, I never threw a four-seam fastball until I was in the big leagues, and I was throwing a bullpen, and my pitching coach was like, all right, well, that's your two-seamer. Like, let me see your four-seamer. And I was like, what is that? Like, that just wasn't the thing. I was always the sinker guy. And so, my biggest comp when I got drafted was Kevin Brown, who to me is one of the best sinker ballers ever. And it's so funny that I got drafted and made it to the big leagues doing that. And now, the back half of my career, I've been a four seam up in the zone guy. Like, high rise. I'm trying to vert, kind of let my vert work. And I think that really helps me out because I think the majority of the league pitches west to east, and I pitch north and south. And so, that kind of helps me a lot. And you're seeing the game evolve. You're going to start seeing guys being able to hit the ball up in the zone, and pitchers are going to have to start, throwing sinkers. And the game is always changing. But yeah, it's funny because I thought I had a good breaking ball in college, but then you get in pro ball, and all of a sudden it's like these guys can hit anything. And so it was kind of more of a necessity. Like I had to change something. I was at the point in my career where I kind of had to, but I was always searching for the right slider grip or the right breaking ball grip, and but and I'm still searching for that. I'm still searching for that perfect pitch to go the other way against a righty. But now I'm just fine with pitching to my strengths a little bit more, and knowing how good my split is. That's the pitch I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this is a common man question. Like I said, I don't know if you're quite familiar with this podcast. I'm the dumb one. Avery's the smart one. When did you kind of realize, like at what point did you realize, all right, like I am all the way fucking back? Like obviously you struggled at the beginning of your career, then you started working, like you said, north to south. Is that the north to south?
Yeah, those are the
when did you start? When did you start to realize, like, when did it click for you? Like, all right, I'm all the way back. Like, I'm good at baseball again. Like, what point of your career was that? Like, was it a game? When was it?
Probably when I got traded to Atlanta. Honestly, unfortunately, when I was with Baltimore, we were just kind of a little bit behind the curve when it came to, metrics and really understanding like pitching to guys' strengths. I look back on scouting reports early in my career, and they would tell everybody in the room like, hey, right-handed pitchers pitch this way, lefties pitch this way. And then it'd be like, all right, and like, don't give up home runs. All right, break. Like that was it. And now, I got traded to Atlanta. I went from being on a terrible team in Baltimore. I mean, we lost 100 games 2 years in a row. 2018, we're really struggling. Manny gets traded, Jonathan Scope gets traded, I get traded, Brad Brock, like Darren O'Day, they kind of just get rid of everybody. And at the time, it was kind of like, you want me to throw fastballs like belt high or above? Like that sounds crazy to me. But we also want you to throw your split way more than you ever have. And I mean, I was 2 starts into Atlanta, and I could just kind of see the swings and misses that I was getting, the foul balls that I was getting against guys that I'd faced for 5-6 years in the big leagues. Was a lot different, and kind of reminded me of like when I was back in high school, some of the swings I would get. And so, they told me, hey, don't pitch out of the windup anymore. You kind of suck out of the windup. So just pitch out of the stretch. You're okay out of the stretch. And so, I started just pitching out of the stretch, and I think I made 10 starts for him in 18, and I think I was like 7-2 or 7-3. Like really pitched well. A lot of games going deep into games. Striking out more guys than I ever had, and so that was kind of the moment that was like, all right, maybe all these metrics and what they're telling me to do, I might be on to something. And then 2019, I tried to come in to camp doing the same thing, and I just couldn't get my fastball up. No matter what I did, I would miss middle and a lot of times, and I'd get a lot of 0-2 counts, like unfavorable counts for a pitcher, but just couldn't execute the pitch, and had to change my delivery in 19. But, in 19, I got DFA'd by Atlanta, went to Cincinnati. I was essentially the last guy in the totem pole out in the bullpen for a while, and just kind of working on things, changed my delivery. And, I had probably one outing that kind of opened my eyes more than any. I was pitching against the Cubs, I think, or the Cardinals. I think it was the Cardinals, and punched out 6 in 2 innings, with one of them being an immaculate inning. And that was kind of like, like, all right, I know I could be a really good reliever, but in the back of my mind, I still wanted to start. I still wanted that opportunity. And so it was kind of more so about, how am I going to do this as a starting pitcher, and it was kind of crazy because at the time there wasn't really many starting pitchers that were primarily 2-pitch guys. And especially a guy being, my primary secondary pitch being a pitch that 90% of the league doesn't even throw. So it was really kind of a big question mark. And going into that offseason, I didn't know what teams were even going to value me as. And the Giants called me and essentially said exactly how I felt. Like, we want you to pitch just how you did in the bullpen with the Reds, but we want you to be a starter. And I was kind of shocked. And I actually grew up a huge Giants fan. So, that was kind of a dream for me to play in San Francisco. And I grew up a huge Barry Bonds fan. So my best friend was a huge Giants fan. So we were always watching the games. And, he was the first person I called, like, hey, I'm going to be a Giant. And he was like, dude, no way. Like, we're losing our mind. And then obviously COVID happens. And COVID was probably one of the best things that happened to me, because I bought a mound and put it in my garage and just worked on my new delivery. And by the time we came back, I was pretty locked in.
I want to go back to some of the Giants times. 2021, you really came into your own at the plate. You hit 185. Do you think you're the reason why they took away the pitcher DH, because you got too good at it?
Hey, I probably am the last person to hit a sac fly.
So sick.
Yeah. Sac fly, last
walk off, right?
I mean, Ohtani kind of ruins all the stats, like, if that guy wasn't in there, me and Logan Webb, we'd be part of history. He hit one on the last day of the season, but now with Ohtani, like,
yours was a pinch hit, right? It was a pinch hit, walk off, sac fly.
Yeah, it was crazy. And actually, Brandon Belt was on deck, so it was awesome. He was like the first guy that got to me. And I mean, it was incredible. Like, that's what you dream of. I tell people all the time, that's probably, my most proud moment in the big leagues.
Better than a strikeout.
Just because it was just so unexpected, and the crowd was going crazy. Like, it was a packed game. It was like a Saturday night. It was kind of cold, but everybody still was in the stands. Like, great game, like 11th or 12th inning. And I mean, I'm in the like in the tunnel in the batting cage, just trying to get swings in, thinking like, there's no way this is going to happen where I actually get up. And, of course they intentionally walk the guy in front of me to get to me. So it just all worked out perfectly. And it was funny because I never pulled the ball. Like, I could never pull the ball. It didn't matter what pitch it was, whether it was a breaking ball, changeup. I just couldn't pull the ball. But I got to 3-2, and I was like, there's no way this guy is going to try to throw me an off-speed pitch right here. So I'm just selling out to a heater right here. And it's funny, in the picture, like, you can see me. I'm literally like, my bat is like so far out front because I was cheating so bad. Like, if he would have thrown me a changeup, I would have swung 3 times before he got there. Like, but it was just a super cool moment. Definitely something I'll never forget.
And you mentioned Webby. So Webby, like I said, not to name drop, he's a buddy of mine, obviously, out of my other podcast, and I text him every once in a while. He mentioned a story that you crush powdered donuts before starts. I believe that was in Baltimore or it was in San Francisco. Can you let us know what the reasoning was behind that? Because that's absolutely bananas.
And you did it during starts at college, right?
Yeah. So it started, I think I was 10 or 11. And I rode with a buddy to the game. I didn't eat any lunch or anything that day. So I had my mom call, his mom call my mom and just say, like, hey, pick me up something from the gas station. So she picked up powdered donuts, which, like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, why are you picking up powdered donuts for your kid? But whatever. And I pitched great that day. Like, I think I threw a 1-hitter or something. Like, it was the best game I'd pitched in my life up to that point. And, like, if you know me, I'm very superstitious. Like, some things I do every single start day in between every inning without even thinking. And that just kind of started right then and there. And through high school, I was, crushing a bag and a half of Hostess donuts, the little mini ones.
Shit.
And I would have about 3 in between every inning. And did that in college too. And LSU did a story my freshman year, and everybody started bringing bags of donuts to the game for me. So, I mean, by the end of my sophomore year, we were number 1 in the country. And so I was having, 5-10 bags of donuts brought to me every time I pitched. I would just take them home and, like, either give them to my roommates, or just leave them at the field for the next start. And yeah, I mean, definitely not ideal or very smart to be doing that, but The funniest thing is like I'll go and watch videos sometimes and like you can see like the powdered sugar like on the corners of my mouth, like I'm like theming for these things. But I would just and I'm kind of a nervous eater, so I would always that's kind of what my thing that I would do is, I would just go in the dugout and just crush a couple donuts and then go back out there.
You talk about your time at LSU. Obviously, sad you didn't get to the College World Series there in your last year, but you were there while the football team went to a national championship, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
What is that like as a college kid going to an SEC school? Like that's every kid's dream, and you were doing it playing baseball on the best team in the country too.
Oh yeah, I mean it was the best. It sucked because so we beat Bama that year. That we went to the national championship. We beat them during the regular season. That was the 9-6 game, and it was crazy. It was all field goals. Pretty boring game. And then so we go into the national championship game, and everybody's super excited. And then we didn't. I think we had a total of 50 yards of offense. Like Alabama just absolutely like Nick Saban just destroyed us, like embarrassed us in the national championship game. But yeah, I mean that's one of the coolest things about LSU. And now that I've been done, I mean I live in Baton Rouge. I'm 10 minutes from the stadium. I go to games as many as I can in the fall, and I mean there is nothing like an SEC football game. In the fall, Saturday night in Death Valley is every like diehard sports fan should experience it. It's really they treat it like this is their NFL here, and it's crazy the amount of exposure that these guys get. And obviously having Daniels last year was the Heisman winner. It's fun to be a part of everything here. The gymnastics team is incredible. Like the baseball team obviously won the national championship, had the first 2 picks in the draft. So LSU right now is probably like the mecca for sports in college. The women's basketball team won the championship. Our dance team just won the national championship, like you name it. So it's been pretty cool to kind of you're always kind of part of it, and it's definitely cool to see.
Yeah, and this is a question from Bassett. He told me Bassett, I was playing Fortnite with him earlier, and he told me he's gonna write 3 questions for you. So the first one he asked is this is something that this might be breaking news in the podcast here. You're the food guy for the Blue Jays, so you alpha everyone on the planet, and you pick where the Blue Jays are going to eat dinners. Is that true?
Well, I'm the only planner, so yeah. I mean, I guess.
Okay, so what he said was, what's your favorite restaurant? He said, what's the favorite one you've taken the boys to?
Oh, I don't know about the favorite one I've taken the boys to, but I mean, there's so many good ones. We're in so many good cities. Like, there's amazing places in Chicago. New York has unbelievable food spots. Like where we are in New York, where we stay. I mean, we're so close to so many good restaurants that you could just walk to. But I mean, the best restaurant I think I have ever been to and will ever go to is probably Jacob's. Like, I think Jacob's, and then you have an unbelievable meal, and then they give you muffins when you leave. Like, I mean, that's just like cherry on the top. So, it's incredible. You get home and the next morning you got a muffin from the best steakhouse in the city. Like, I mean, you can't beat that. So, I mean, that's definitely one of my favorite spots. But in Toronto, there's so many good spots. There's so many good places to eat and super unique, going with Rue, he takes us to, Korean barbecue places all the time. And there's some great places in New York that he's taken us to. So I'm all about like experiences, and I love having like a big table full of the boys all like crushing food and drinking some good wine for sure.
Yeah. So again, not to name drop again, I'm really good buddies with Jano as well. And he told a funny story on this podcast where he goes out with Ryu to Korean barbecue places, and they worship him like he is the second coming of Christ. Is this true? Do you have any funny stories about Ryu just walking through there and people like just going bananas about Ryu being in the building?
Oh yeah, I mean he's their LeBron. Like, he's their LeBron James, like he really is. And he's huge. He's just like Manoa. Like, he can't go anywhere. Like, if you're Korean and you see him, there's no like, oh, I think that's my cousin. Like, no, that's that's Hun Jin Ryu. Like that's like there's no, like there's nobody else like him. Like he's the biggest Korean I've ever seen. Not that I've seen many Koreans, but he is just such a distinct like look and like, and he walks so like smooth and like he's just like, he obviously knows how big of a deal he is. But yeah, you go in some of these places, and I mean, we went one time in New York, and like we went after a night game in New York one time, and I don't think we got to the restaurant till like midnight or 12:30, and they stayed open. And I mean, they just keep bringing food after food, like, and then he'll turn to his interpreter, and the interpreter will say like, now they're going to start bringing the good stuff, and like we've already been there for 2 hours, and so it's like, all right, now come out like the marinated meats, and it's like, man, like this is crazy. And I mean, I don't even know if he pays. Like I've never seen him really pay. So it's just kind of when he comes there, they kind of, I don't know. I don't know if they get more business from him coming and people talking about it. But I remember Stripling telling me a story about they went to a Korean barbecue place in Baltimore, and when they walked outside, there was like 200 Koreans outside, and yeah, and Hunjin like stayed and said hi to every single person. Like they said it was like one of the coolest things you could imagine. So
He seems like the best ever. One of the things from last season again was the pitch clock coming in, and they said they were going to ban that foot tap you do before you start your motion. How nervous were you start of the season, and how much did they actually enforce that? Because it seemed by the end you were just back to how you were throwing before.
I mean, I was really nervous actually. It took me a long time last off season to get myself to actually stop, because I kind of toe that line of stopping or not stopping just about every time. And if it's a big situation, it's even closer, So I was super worried. But honestly, spring was great because, with the checks now, we actually get to talk to them. So if you have an umpire that you like, at least, that's checking you, you can kind of be like, hey, I know you guys are looking at my delivery, like, what'd you think? Am I close? Like, or am I good? And usually a lot of them would be like, you're good. Every once in a while you run into someone that's like, if this was a regular season game, I probably would have called a balk first pitch, and it's like, okay, well, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I was super nervous, but as the season went on, I think the worst part about it is that you have these third base and first base coaches that are right by the umpires that will just kind of nibble and just kind of bicker. That one was close. Like, look at him. Like he's not coming. He's not stopping. And that's usually, you can kind of hear those guys, and sometimes they'll like complain enough to where the umpire is like, maybe he is balking. You kind of run into some of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it all worked out. I don't remember getting called for a balk last year, but I definitely remember the year before getting called for a balk.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking about the year before last year, I wanted to touch on because we talked about it last week with Schneider. How electric the Rogers Center is during playoff baseball. You got the opportunity to pitch in Game 2 of the Wild Card Series. You absolutely fucking shoved. I was in the 500s, just absolutely grinding away. But what was that atmosphere like for you? Was that the craziest atmosphere you've ever pitched in?
Yeah, for sure. That's the craziest atmosphere. 21, I got the Dodgers Game 2. And I mean, that's just such a rivalry that was pretty intense too. But it was outside, and so it's just not as loud, But yeah, I mean, I thought warming up that game, I just kind of got a sense that like if we can score first, this place is absolutely gonna lose their mind, and we did. And it was crazy. Like the whole place was nuts. And I mean, when you're in a game like that, you're just trying to kind of like not ride the emotions, especially as a pitcher. It's kind of like what Bassett talked about. Like you're in your own bubble out there. You're trying to not let anything into your bubble. Um, so for me, that was a super cool game because it was actually one of my favorite moments with Snyder's. He pulled me, and as he's pulling me, he's like, "Guys, like hell of a job. Like take a moment as you're walking off this field to like soak this in." And I usually never kind of let myself even look up. I usually kind of just keep my head down, and I mean, that was the first time I looked up, and it's funny if you watch the video of me coming off the field, I'm literally like shaking my head as I get close to the dugout because I'm like, this place is insane right now. Just the amount of love and like support that I felt, and like the thing that I feel from the fans. I mean, it was crazy. Like, there's nothing like that. That's what you dream of as a pitcher, especially a starter. To be in an elimination game like that, do well and then come off the field to 40,000 people and just making you feel like you're the greatest thing ever. I mean, it was super cool, and it was unfortunate because obviously the way that the game turned out sucked because you went from such a high to such a low pretty quickly, and we had guys banged up in the training room. I think George had a concussion, and looked in his eyes, and he was just kind of seeing stars, and Bo was messed up, and everybody was just kind of like, man, like, it just sucked the way that we lost. So I mean, that was tough, but yeah, walking off that field, I mean, I wasn't walking off that field, I was floating, literally, like, my legs, I couldn't feel my legs. Like, if I would have fell down, I wouldn't have known. Like, it was crazy. Probably definitely the coolest moment, besides the sack fly for sure. But
Yeah, that's way better.
yeah.
So I think one of the best compliments you could have right now is whenever you kind of pitch poorly, it's all in retrospect too. You pitching poorly is different than some other people, is people just think you're tipping pitches. It's not that you're pitching poorly. And it was 2 years ago too. You said the one thing was your glove. You just got a bigger glove. How big of a glove did we get to now? Because the thing looks massive compared to some other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's close to 13 inches.
Holy shit.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but I mean, I got some big hands, so I mean, I've always kind of needed a big glove. Um, but yeah, I mean, and honestly, so every glove is different. Like, you might get a glove that you think is 13 inches, and then it comes in and you mold it the way that you want, and it gets smaller. But then some gloves just look huge on you, and it's funny because usually someone says a comment about it. Like, you can kind of hear the comments from your teammates, like, or guys on the bus will kind of say just like random things like, how did you miss that ground ball with that big of a glove or something like that? And so, it's funny, but yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing. Anytime there's a guy on second base, they're trying to relay something. I think that's the unfortunate thing about, the whole Astros thing and everything that's changed since then is, no more is there's not even signs anymore. So you can't try to pick signs anymore. So they're trying to look at other ways of trying to steal something with what you're doing with your body language or with your wrist or where your hand is. Sometimes your glove pokes out a little bit more on a certain pitch, and that's one thing that Pete Walker is obsessed with, is constantly looking at these things, and he can see it right away. He'll see it right away in the next bullpen. He's like, hey, this is what I think you were doing. Just try to really squeeze your glove when you throw this certain pitch, or and kind of everybody has gone through that at some point in their career, to be honest. You see a lot of young kids that come up, and it's the first time we face somebody, and everybody in the dugout can see it. Things are prepared. Other things, it takes someone kind of being in the league for a while to really understand what they're even looking at.
Yeah, and speaking about Pistol Pete Walker, we're Pete Walker stands on this podcast. We think he's the greatest to ever do it. Obviously, we grew up with him as a Blue Jays pitching coach. What is it like playing under Pete Walker? I mean, this guy turns every single pitcher. I mean, Bowden talked about on the podcast how good he was. Bassett always talked about how good he is. What is it like for you as a veteran guy to learn from Pete Walker, who knows so much about the game and has shown that he has so much success working with pitchers?
Yeah, the biggest thing about Pete is like he just has an aura about him. Like, you're around him, and he just has a way of kind of going about his business, the way he talks to players. He can break things down to make you understand them if you don't understand what he's trying to tell you. And he's the ultra competitor, which is what you want as a pitching coach. We always joke that if Pete could be out there, he would 100%. Like if he could have one more outing in a big spot, like he loves that stuff and he wants us to do so well. He gets so nervous because of it, but it's because he's so passionate. That's what you want as a player. You want someone that's, gonna be in your corner, and he's always got our back, maybe a little too much sometimes. Like he's yelling at every umpire, every single pitch, and so it's pretty funny, but he's such a fiery person, but such a genuine person. And he's been great for me to kind of bounce ideas off of. And he's incredible. I can't talk well enough about him and what he brings to the table. The way that he can know how to talk to each guy individually, and know their needs. I think he's incredible at that, especially you think about our staff, he has to kind of be that, sergeant, I guess, for all of us. And he just loves being able to watch us go about our business, and always trying to put us in situations for us to be successful.
I listened to the Pitching Ninja interview you did where it's kind of all about your splitter. And the interesting thing I took from that was you get the blood blister on your middle finger every time you throw it. Is that still a thing? And how is that kind of different from the blisters that take people out of games, and kind of explain that whole thing to the people who don't know?
I think a lot of guys now who get blisters and take themselves out, I don't think they know how to pitch with the blister. I think that's the problem. For me, I get excited when I see the blister because that usually means that it's rolling off this side of my finger, which is what I want. So if it's early in the game, like, even as early as the second inning, and I look down and I'm starting to get one, like in my mind, I know, like, all right, I got my good split today. And then really, I mean, there's certain times where I'll throw it and it'll catch a seam and it kind of, doesn't feel great. But I have so much adrenaline that I'm just like, I'm never going to come out of a game for a blister. Yeah, I've always said that, like, that will not be a thing. I've had them pop before and like blood on my pants and stuff, but it's like at that moment, it's like whatever, I can do enough in the weight room for the next 4 days, or training room to be good, like make sure my finger is good. But yeah, I mean, it's a running joke because I'm always messing with my finger, like constantly. I feel like I'm like a nail specialist. Like I'm constantly messing with it, and but I've figured out kind of what I need to do in between starts to make sure that that's not a problem. I don't throw my split in bullpens in between my starts, and that kind of takes away some of the stress of that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that took me a while to kind of get used to, but it still happens all the time too, especially certain places where it's very humid, or it's kind of two extremes. If it's super humid and really hot, then I'll get them, and then if it's cold and dry, I'll get them. Usually Rogers Center, you don't have to worry about that because if it's so cold, they'll close it, right? So, but sometimes being on the road, when you're on the road, you get way worse rubbed up balls than you do at home on the home side. So you usually run into more problems on the road than you do at home.
That makes sense. Talking about on the road and all that, what is the atmosphere for you being a Blue Jays player that's the worst to play in? Like the most hostile, the fans hate you the most. Like where do you get it the worst as a starting pitcher warming up in the bullpen?
For me, it's the places where they're like as close as they can get to you. Um, Boston used to be really bad. Like when Boston's really good and it's a big series, and they kind of when they want to be dicks, they'll be dicks. So they'll be right on there yelling at you, and saying everything you could imagine. Seattle's pretty good at that because the bullpen is right next to like the bars and stuff. They used to have a plexiglass window behind the catcher where you warmed up in Seattle, and like it was in a bar, and people would just like stand in front of the thing with their drinks, and flip you off as you're trying to like find your curveball. And like I just always thought that was super cool. You hear about old Yankee Stadium really being that. The new one, you get a lot when you're warming up. You'll get the good New York Yankees fans that just kind of rear, lean into you and kind of are yelling at you. But then you go out into the game, and all the seats around the dugout are like sponsored, or everybody's wearing suits and ties, and like it's a corporate event. They don't necessarily they're not necessarily diehard Yankees fans, so you just don't hear as much of that. And especially if you can kind of start off the game pitching well, it can get kind of quiet there, to be honest. But when you're warming up, you definitely hear that. And,
Dude, did Swanee
lucky
tell you the
enough,
story of at Fenway Park a fan stole his glove off of the bullpen?
Really?
Yeah, he left his glove on top of the bullpen. Obviously, Swanee, that's just what he does. And he went to go warm up, and he didn't have his glove. And a security guard saw a fan just walking through the aisle with his glove and brought it all the way down to him. So it goes to show you, like, that's how close you are to the fans in Fenway.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was my first year, my second, I was in the bullpen in Fenway, and it's the eighth inning. They're doing Sweet Caroline. Tommy Hunter's warming up, and like the place is crazy. Sweet Caroline at Fenway is super cool. If you've never been there and seen it, like the whole crowd sings the song. At the time they were one of the best teams in baseball, so it was packed. And like I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, this is sweet. Like it's probably the second time I've ever been to Fenway, and all of a sudden these legs just like plop right in front of me in the bullpen. I'm like, what the heck? And this girl who's probably late 20s like pushes herself off the top of the bullpen to get into the bullpen, and just completely like eats it, like face plant into the ground, and like just full scorpion, like, and it's right in front of me. Like her legs are like completely open, like I see everything, like, and she's like wasted, and she gets up, and actually luckily she, like, Tommy Hunter throws a fastball right by her.
No.
Like she hits, and he's like right here and throws it, and it just sails right by her. And everybody's like, holy crap. She turns around to her friends. She's like, yeah. And then she hops the like little fence to get onto the field. And they used to have a security guard that worked there for a long time. And he like loved to lay people out. He lived to tackle people. And this chick was one step onto the warning track and gets laid out by this dude, and like he comes back in the bullpen after everything settles, and everybody's giving him claps, and he's like, I've been waiting for that, And I was like, this place is pretty sweet. Like Fenway's pretty cool. The fans are crazy. Like everybody's trying to have a good time anytime they go to Fenway.
One of my favorite things to do on Twitter is just to rank swings on how nice they are. You're a guy, when you don't start, you're on the bench, obviously, watching the guys. Who are your 3 favorite Blue Jays swings? You think they have the nicest swings? You get to see it up close.
Ooh, I'm a big fan of Cav's swing, Cav and BGO. I love BGO's swing. There's just something about a lefty swing. Like lefty swings are always prettier than righty swings. I don't care what anybody says. Whit Merrifield had like such a sweet little swing that he could kind of, he controls the bat head so well that, he'll just kind of, he looks like he's playing golf, and so, I mean, Vladdy's really fun to watch. His swing is just so powerful. Like sometimes he'll swing and miss, and like you can hear the bat. You hear the like, whoosh. Bo has such a unique swing. Bo's 2-strike approach, where he's kind of just sitting on his front foot, is so unique. And I think if he ever wanted to just, see how many singles he could get, I think he would. He could win a batting title very easily doing that. I love Brandon Belt's swing, like super unique lefty swing. I like Jano's swing too. I always tell Jano he swings like a caveman. The no batting gloves thing, like, so, I mean, I don't know, to rank them would be tough, but I'd say probably number 1 is Cav. Like, I just love his lefty swing. And, when he hit that walk-off home run and dropped the bat, like, that was sick. It's so cool. Like, I mean, we have the best seat in the house to watch stuff like that. So, when someone does something like that, it's just so cool. And it was really sweet.
Just electric stuff from COVID Cabin. That's what we call him because he was just electric that COVID year. But I got a question here again from Bassett. Listen, Gausman, we'll be at spring training. You have an open invite to the Gate 14 house. I want to make that clear. Everyone's everyone's coming. So you have an open invite to the Gate 14 house. Hopefully we make that happen. Chris Bassett said there's a golf match in the spring that I'd love to get into this. It's Bassett and you versus Romano and Swanee. Can you tell the people what's going on with this? Like, is this predetermined or did he just make this up for the question?
Yeah, I mean, I heard about this a day ago, so I guess it's a thing. But sure, whatever.
Are you gonna beat him? Where are you at with it? Are you a good golfer?
He's wearing Melbourne golf stuff. He's a big golf guy. Look at that.
I mean, I can play a little bit. I'm good enough to where I can play with just about anybody, but also bad enough to where I can look really bad on some certain holes. Golf is a hard sport. There's a lot of failure in golf, and I definitely know about that. But I mean, I would say it's me and Bassett against Romano and Swanee.
Yes.
I don't think Swanee is a good golfer.
No.
I've never heard anything about him even playing golf. So yeah, so I'm going to take me and Bass for sure. I mean,
well,
if Bassett can drive the ball well, then we're set.
Well, Swanee said he's a cat shit golfer. So I listen, that's obviously not the confidence you need on the golf course, but I don't know if Bassett's good. Avery, Bassett told us he hasn't played in like forever, right?
Yeah, he told us today he hasn't touched the sticks in a month.
Yeah, that's not a good partner there, Gossy. We'll record that. We'll get it going.
That's not ideal. That's for sure.
It's not great. It's not great. But speaking about last year and all that, when did you, and this is again my dumb brain question, at what point during a start did you realize, all right, my splitter's on today? Was it in the bullpen? Was it like, did you do reverse psychology where it's bad in the bullpen, it's really good in the game? Like, when did you realize, okay, I'm on the loose today?
Honestly, I wish I could say that I feel that all the time, but some games, usually it gets better as the game goes on. That's kind of true always, but some games it's better earlier, if that makes sense. So sometimes I'll like finish the first inning, and if I had some really good splits in the first inning, then I feel pretty good saying that my split's probably going to be really good all night. And it's just a matter of kind of trying to get to a spot to where I can throw it and doing enough with my fastball, whether it's up in the zone or down in the zone, to kind of either create more of a difference between it or make it look similar. So it's really just kind of about figuring that out. But, sometimes in the bullpen, I can throw my first couple and kind of know what kind of day it's going to be with it. But then also sometimes it'll be terrible for the first 2 innings, and then I'll throw the first one in the 3rd inning, and I'm like, all right, there it is. And now we go. But the more that I throw it earlier in the game, usually the better off it is later in the game. Because, when I get in a big spot, like that's kind of what I lean on is my split, and being able to know when to throw a nasty one and when to throw one, for a called strike or a pitch that, is going to entice them, and also a pitch that, if they swing at, they're not going to be able to do anything with it.
One of the more viral moments from last year was when your daughter threw out the first pitch. How special of a moment was that for you? Because we talked about who Mesa and Swanee had their kids do it too, and they said it was an awesome experience. You looking back on that, what do you think about it again?
We call your family the royal family, by the way. Like that's our royal family in Canada. Like that's the king and queen and all the kids and all that type of stuff. So we just wanted to make that clear.
I love that. No, I mean, it was super cool. To see how nervous and like she got out there and she was so nervous. She's looking around at everybody, and then she kind of sees me and just kind of automatically like calms down and is like, I've thrown stuff to my dad for, my entire life. She's only 5 years old, but, so, and I mean, I'm sitting there, I'm like, I can't believe that she had to throw out a first pitch. I told my wife, I'm like, I never threw out a first pitch. Like I've caught first pitches, but to throw one out, like it's so cool. And she did it my first year in Toronto. And now it's like, if they'll let her do it every year that I'm there, like I'm in 100%. Hopefully my last year, like my youngest one will, be be 5 and she'll be able to throw it right next to her sister. And hopefully I can catch both of them. Like that would be awesome as a parent, to just see her out on the stage. She's so innocent and so little in such, an environment that I think is pretty hostile, being out on the field. Like we think of going out and competing and stuff, and then she's just out there in her little pinstripe dress, like just cute as can be, and makes it to me, one hops me, and I'm telling her how great of a job she did, and we get off the field, and she's like, but dad, she's like, they all cheered, daddy. I'm like, yeah, of course they cheered. And she's like, but it bounced, like she
That's the gold standard.
that's like the innocence of kids. Like you saw it when Maze's kid walked all the way back to the mound. It's like, wait, like my dad throws from back here. This is where I'm going to throw it from. Like, I'm not going to throw it from up here. Like my dad's on the mound. I'm going to be on the mound. They do so many funny things without even thinking that they're funny, just because they're so naive and so innocent.
Yeah. And speaking about this, and this is a chance for me to redeem myself. When we interviewed Jano, I asked him if his 9-month-old son was aware that he's a professional baseball player. Looking back on it, not the smartest question I've ever asked in the history of this podcast. Is your daughter aware of who you are? Because you told a story about when Alek Manoah struggled game 1, your daughter went over to Manoah and hugged him. Is she aware that, like, you're, like, the best pitcher on the Toronto Blue Jays? Like, is she aware of what you do for work?
Yes and no. She knows that. I think she knows that what I do is not normal, but to her, that's all she knows. So it is normal, So like a funny story, like we were in Toronto, had probably been there for a couple months, my first year, and she goes to this little like school kind of for a couple hours, every day, and she asked one of the kids in class, like, like, does your dad play baseball too? She just assumes that everybody's dad plays baseball, because when she goes to the kids' room at the field, she's playing with everybody whose dad plays baseball, and so she just assumed that everybody's dad does that, but I mean, that's one of the coolest things. The older she gets, the more like, she cheers for me on the days that I pitch. And, sometimes she'll come down and watch me warm up in the bullpen. And, I think a lot about them when I'm in tough situations, knowing that they're kind of watching. And, I always jokingly say, I hope one day that they watch me pitch on TV or something when they're older and can kind of see like the passion that I have, and how much I'm trying to do everything I can to make them proud. But it's cool now. She sends me videos every day that I pitch, and like, kick some booty today, daddy. Like those things, are so cool. And I hope that. But yeah, I don't think she's gonna remember too much. Like I think she's gonna remember traveling a lot. She's on flights all the time. My wife is crazy and flies all over the place with them all year. A week in Toronto and then a week at home, and then a week in Toronto, a week at home, pretty much for the whole season. Like that's kind of the way we do it. And so, I mean, last year my youngest flew 48 times. She took 48 flights last year. So, my wife told me the other day, it's funny. She was like, when you're retired and we travel as a family for the first time, like they're going to have so many miles. I'm going to have so many miles. We're going to be upgraded to first class, and you're going to be in the back of the plane because, like we don't get miles for charter flights.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, like what a life. Like what a life they're going to have. They're going to have so many miles, like, but they're pros at traveling now. They're great at it, but it's crazy for sure.
I have a proposition for Taylor. I mean, Taylor's probably I would probably say like the most famous or easily noticeable wife on the Toronto Blue Jays. I've mentioned this to Swanee after the podcast. It's like my brain, just the creativity working. Taylor's got to start a podcast. A baseball wives podcast would do absolute numbers. Like obviously, like people would be very interested in what goes on in their lives. It'd be very informative. Me and you know what? Avery will produce it. I won't produce it. But, a baseball wives podcast would rock. Just something to mention.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't trust her with that. Some of the stories that would come out, I don't know about that, but yeah, that's funny.
A good idea.
After the season finished and you kind of sat down and looked at it, how did you nitpick things and things for you to work on for next year after you had such a successful season? Again, like elite pitcher, what's the next step for you that you're thinking about to continue to get better?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is trying to throw more pitches. Trying to, I worked a lot this year throwing sinkers with Bassett, and he's a guy that's like, dude, your sinker's good. Like, you need to throw it. And I'm like, dude, I have PTSD from giving up home runs on sinkers early in my career, like, I don't know. But they got me throwing a little sweeper that I started throwing at the end of the year. I actually think I threw more in the postseason game than I had all year in any other game. Just a different look. Yeah, but I mean, to be honest, for me, the biggest, I guess weakness in my game is that was really apparent last year is holding runners. I was not very good at holding runners, and when I think back to how many times, I pitched really well, but a guy scored on a single, being on second base because he stole second base, or timed me up well enough because I wasn't changing my times. And I think back how many times I could have maybe not given up any runs in certain games, or, I legitimately think I maybe could have won the Cy Young if I was better at holding runners, and it just put us in a lot better situation if I was better at holding runners. Having a guy at first, knowing that if you can keep them there and get a ball on the ground with our infield, we have such a good chance of turning a double play. That's one thing I have to be better at. Using the slide step more. With the clock, it's even harder on pitchers because they have something to time you up even more so. We're going to have less time this next season. So, like I said, they're always looking for every little, thing that they can do to try to find an advantage. And so for me, that's my biggest focus right now, is to really hone in on those things, knowing that it's such a big difference maker when you can keep guys at the base that they're at. And the bloop single where you break a guy's bat and the guy scores because he's in scoring position, would happen a lot less. So, that's a big focus of mine. But the biggest is just coming to the season healthy, get through spring training healthy. And then I feel pretty confident that I can make all my starts. And, if I can make all my starts and be healthy, I feel pretty confident that I can go out there and give us a chance to win every 5 days, and give everything I got. It kind of depends on how I feel sometimes, but, I feel pretty confident in saying that I've kind of figured out how to get my body right and what I need to do to be at my best. So, now it's about working on the little things, the changing up the times to the plate, the holds. It's hard now. It's hard now with the rules, with the pitching rules, the clock, the disengagements, which is ridiculous that is even a thing. Guys are just running like crazy. Everybody made such a big deal out of Ronald Acuna, stealing all those bases, but everybody forgets the bases are 30% bigger than they've ever been. The guys are faster, and now you're giving them, you can only pick over twice. It's like they might as well just, let them like walk to second base because some of these guys are just that good. So, it kind of, and it sucks for catchers too, because it messes up their entire metrics because, now it doesn't really even matter if a guy has a great pop time, because if the pitcher, already used one of his disengagements or already used two, then what are you supposed to do? And yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at though.
Yeah, and this is the last question. So obviously I've had the privilege of getting really close to Chris Bassett. Obviously, firstly, I want to say thank you to Chris Bassett for making this possible. 2-part question. What did Seabass say to you to persuade you to come on this podcast? And 2, what is it like being teammates, friends with Chris Bassett? Because listen, I go out on the battlefield with him every single day on Fortnite. I know how much of a competitor he is. What is it like being teammates with him? That's second part of the question.
Yeah, I'll answer the second part first. He's great. I mean, he's a great teammate. His locker was next to mine last year. It was next to me in spring training. Uh, the biggest thing that I can say about Chris is a pro's pro. He wants to be as good as he possibly can. We've had a lot of conversations about, we're a lot alike in a lot of ways, to where, failure in our mind is not an option. And we're almost so afraid to fail that we're going to succeed. But man, when he takes the mound, like, I mean, his nickname is a prime example. The Hound. Like, he's so competitive. He wants to just absolutely dominate, but he's very smart while he's out there. He doesn't make dumb decisions when he's out there. He's always thinking. For me to watch him, it's really cool because we couldn't be more different. Our lockers are right next to each other. We get along great. But watching him pitch and watching me pitch couldn't be more different. He has 7, 8 different pitches. He'll throw them in any spot. He'll throw them in any situation. He's obviously, his delivery is really unique. But I mean, the way he goes about it, he's such a good teammate. He's such a good person. His wife is amazing. His family's great. His daughter and my daughter became pretty close last year. And so, when you have relationships like that and you guys can both kind of succeed together, especially him, his first year being in Toronto last year, being able to watch him have a career year, his first year here, it was awesome, and everybody kind of became fans of him. And it was awesome for good reason. Like, watching him pitch every 5 days is incredible, but he's just such a good person. He's such a good person. But he's a dude's dude for sure. Like, he loves talking about sports. He loves talking about the Browns, and like, sometimes it's like you get annoyed because that's all he wants to talk about, especially the fantasy football thing. Like, he loves that. He lives for that. He's all about it. We got a group chat. He's the first one to fire off, like, yelling at certain guys for acquiring other guys. Like, he is just, but he keeps it loose, and he's great. He's great with the younger guys too. I think as a pitcher, like, watching him go about his business is a, if you're a young guy watching him go about his business, like, you could learn a lot from him. He just takes things very seriously, and he's a pro's pro, but he also knows that, sometimes you're going to feel great and make the perfect pitch, but it's not going to work out because that's baseball, right? So, we get along great though, and he's been a great teammate of mine for sure. So the other question
calls you the ghost because he said you never answer text messages. So I'd love to hear the pitch that Seabass gave you about coming on here.
Okay, well, the thing about Bassett is Bassett doesn't text. He sends you videos of him talking in his truck.
Yes.
And it's just like, my wife thinks it's the weirdest thing. We'll just be sitting there and I'll just play a video of him talking. She's like, he send you another video? And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know why you can't just text me, or call me. Just call me on the phone. But that's him. I don't know. He does that. Like, he did that from like the first week I met him. Sent me a video talking about something. Like, it's like, all right, I guess this is gonna go. But yeah, I mean, he was just kind of like, hey, I think you should go on here. Like, they're awesome. He was like, they're essentially on our side, which is always good to know as a player. You never want to go into a podcast that you feel like someone is trying to be malicious or, trying to get clickbait or something like that. And so, I actually went and listened to a couple of you guys' podcasts today, and it's super cool what you guys are doing. So I wanted to come on.
Listen, man, you come on this podcast. You got a big fan group behind you when you come on here. You're gonna be getting people at spring training telling you they loved you on Gate 14. So, listen, I want to end it with this. Obviously, not to get sentimental, but if you told me and Avery a year and a half ago we'd be interviewing Kevin Gausman, I would have called you an absolute idiot. I rarely take a step back and be like, can't believe we just did this. So I really appreciate you taking the time for us, man. It just goes show you the Gate 14 rocket ship. We're buzzing out here. We appreciate guys like you being on our side, being on the Toronto Blue Jays. We love what you do. We always will be rooting for you, man. And we're excited for 2024 for you. We really are.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'm super excited. Obviously, got a young team still, so a lot of optimism and listen, we're all chomping at the bit to get down to spring training. We have such a close knit group of guys, and that's why if we can win with this group, it's going to be even more special than if they were to bring in every single person that you could ever imagine. So that's what I'm excited about. Is we don't really feel like we have like a missing link. We just got to kind of make sure that all those links are kind of welded a little bit better together. And so, that's what we're excited about. But yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'll probably see you guys in spring. If we want to hit the links or something, we can definitely make that happen too.
Yeah. Listen, Avery, do you have anything more for our guy? Listen.
No, thanks, Kev. Appreciate your time, man. Really
we'll be there March 1st to 6th. All right. I'll send you the note. Bassett, we're already got Bassett locked in. We're doing a little Gate 14 sleepover with Ernie and Schneider and Horwitz. Obviously, you're a little bit too mature for that, obviously, but we got some stuff locked in here. We got some stuff locked in here for spring, so we'll definitely even go for dinner or something along those lines. I'll hit you up and we'll get going from there. But keep doing your thing, man. You always got us. We'll be fighting the fights on Twitter for you till the end of time. You know that. We like to get in the mud over here, so you got us behind you.
All right, I love that. Appreciate it, guys.